welcome to Tryon Palace Live. I'm Mike Spafford. I'm one of the gardeners here. There's only 4 of us, so we're able to practice our social distancing very well since we have about 16 acres of gardens here. And a lot of people don't realize that we have a number of gardens that are outside of the gates, that normally if the gates to these gardens are open, you can walk through them free of charge. This is one of the gardens that we have, one of the few formal gardens that we have, the Carraway Garden. And it's somewhat mirrored to the Latham Garden, and that we do the tulips and the clip, and we'll change the color out in here, seasonally. Tulips right now are looking great. The azaleas over on the edges, the Georgia Tabors, we've hit them perfectly today. They'll look good for another week or so, depending on the weather. We've had some really, with the very mild winter, we've had irises blooming pretty much nonstop all winter, which is somewhat unusual for bearded irises. Now this is a rebloomer. I don't have the cultivar name on it, unfortunately, but it's started blooming mid-fall and it's not stopped. So somewhat unusual. And we'll just all these gardens are somewhat interconnected, so we can just kind of walk from garden to garden. About a month ago, the Prunus mumes were in full flower in here, and the fragrance and the color is just unbelievable. This is the entrance into the Stanley Garden. We do a number of wedding venues in here. It's much smaller weddings. And what we've been trying to do over the last several years is are starting. The one actually back that way, we can walk closer to it, is in full bloom. Another really neat plant we're trying out is a Hellebore, but this is a little different one. It's one of the new hybrids, and they're actually sterile, and it's grown as much for the really neat foliage as it is for the camellias. They're just about done. We've got a number of camellias in this garden. This is Camellia Japonica. Forget the cultivar name. But they'll be flowering for the next few weeks. And keeping with the white theme, we've got a number of plants in here that are in bloom. The Fothergilla, which is the white bottle brush. They're actually blooming a little bit early with the strange mild weather that we've had. They usually flower about 3 weeks later, and they very seldom flower with Loropetalum. And this is a white cultivar of Loropetalum, which anymore you generally only see the pink forms of it, or the purple foliaged ones. But this is a green one with white flowers, so I thought would be appropriate for in here. This dogwood is in full bloom right now. It's looking great. And then in this bed, once the winter color disappears, we still all summer will have this hydrangea, cultivar is Mauricii, which you have a great variegated foliage and then blue lace cap flowers on it in the summertime. So that'll kind of carry this bed through the summer. And we'll change the violas out to something different in the summertime. Another neat little plant is this azalea with a very confusing name. The cultivar name is Hearty Gardenia. It's a double flowering white, and it also tends to rebloom, so you'll have flowers right about now in springtime, and then again in fall through early winter. Not really fragrant, so people look at it and go, well, that's a gardenia, and then you don't have the smell. But great plant, smaller growing azalea if you have a smaller space. Back on the fence there, I don't know if you can see it, is a Lady Banks rose, which is in full bloom right now. This one's a little, for whatever reason, a little bit behind a lot of the others I've seen in town. Maybe it's because it's in more shade, but it's in full bloom now. It looks good, smells good. Nice thing with that, it's almost thornless, almost. You have to be careful because there's a thorn every now and then that will get you if you're not careful. The hedges in this garden are all boxwoods, and we've over the last several years we've been going away from boxwoods just because they're pretty temperamental here. They don't tend to live very long, especially as a hedge. So as we have to switch them out, we'll go with dwarf hollies like are in the Carraway garden. Got a few white Columbines in flower. This Salvia has just bloomed. It's never stopped flowering since last summer. It's just continued to bloom, and I think it's going to be one that just gets better and better with age as those clumps get bigger. Very easy to grow. This garden is a little more spread out, so you don't have the concentration of color like you would have, say, in the Commission Garden or the Jones house, the Dot Tyler garden there. So it takes you got to do a little more walking. Let's see. We do have a number of water lilies that are actually just starting to push up new leaves. And they'll be in flower here sometime in early summer. So it's time to clean this out for spring cleaning. Another Hellebore this one's actually been flowering since November is this is Helleborus Niger Christmas rose, but this is one in my opinion is probably the best cultivar of it, called Joseph Limper, and it starts flowering usually in early November, late October, and it'll flower all the way up through now. Excellent evergreen, looks good year round. Very nice plant. And it's not aggressive. It doesn't take over. And here we have a few of the Spanish bluebells. They're actually a little bit past in here. A few of the other gardens, they're a little more exposed. They're just reaching their peak. But it's a great plant for naturalizing, especially under trees where you don't have a lot of other plants, because they come up early. They'll shade a lot of things out, but then they do go summer dormant. So you can plant other things that come up later in the year, like Solomon seals or something like that. This is the Stony Garden. We're actually in the process of doing some renovations in here, so it looks a little bare. We've removed part of the hedge because it had gotten way overgrown and was causing way too much shade in here, so we were having trouble growing a lot of plants that had once thrived in here. It just pretty much disappeared. So we're hoping to get this garden back to where it used to be, 20 years ago. Another Hellebore right here, this is bear claw hellebore, or stinking hellebore. Usually flowers really early. Flowers are green, kind of interesting, not overly showy, but the foliage is really outstanding on it. Very cut leaf, interesting green with some purples in it sometimes. Another plant in here that's a plant that will go summer dormant is Arum italicum, grown mostly for its foliage. And it comes up usually in fall, does its thing, and then goes dormant in the summer when it's hot. So great plant for winter interest. Japanese roof iris, just coming into bloom. And we've got mostly purples, but there are some white ones, and there's a few that are kind of intermediate between the two. They tend to hybridize, or not hybridize, but tend to cross pretty freely. This is a plant that shouldn't be growing right now. It should be completely dormant. This is a Salvia that's usually a late fall bloomer, and then it gets cold, disappears, and we always wonder if it's going to come back or not. It never went dormant this winter. In fact, it's blooming right now, which is really pretty unusual for it. Let's see, what else do we have? In the center here is a purple weeping redbud that once it's done flowering, the new foliage will come out a dark burgundy, and eventually it will fade to a dark green. But beautiful structural, and the color on it is outstanding. We've got a number of irises in here that we're kind of we're getting in between flowering, so there's not a lot going on in here. This is mostly a summer garden. There'll be summer through fall. There'll be rudbeckias and irises and salvias and a number of things, and a lot of roses in here as well. That'll be up and growing. So in a month, this garden will look completely different. And that's one of the neat things with having gardens like this is they look different from week to week, month to month. There's always something else going on in them. And a lot of these gardens, they're smaller and they're a lot more intimate, so we're able to do a little more interesting things here than what we're kind of confined to do within the palace walls, where it's a lot more structured. We can kind of get away with a little bit more out here, and it's fun thing to do. Oh, and this is a Columbine. This is one of our native Columbines. It's getting a good early start this year. Tends to be a fairly long-lived perennial, but it also reseeds very freely. So if you have one year, you're going to have plenty of them the next year. Especially if you just let the seed kind of distribute itself, you'll have them showing up all over through your garden. Garden, we also have some really nice native dwarf sable minor, which is one of the dwarf palms. We actually have a couple we have two natives. There's sable minor, which is this, and then there's sable palmetto, which is the Palmetto Palm, which you see those planted all over the place. Unfortunately, most of those are coming out of Florida, and they're not very cold hardy, so people lost most of those over the last couple of years. That's a Dutch iris, a purple one, and they come in all color ranges, from yellow to white to purple, and quite a few bicolors as well. They're beautiful, very reliable flower. More of the Spanish bluebells. Oh yeah, the pathways in here are oyster shells. I believe this is the only garden we have here with oyster shells. It does require a fair amount of maintenance because they don't tend to stay put very well. As you can see along the edges, I have to come through pretty regularly and put them back on the path. And you do not want to walk on it barefoot for sure. You just have to watch your step. They're quite sharp. The two trees here flanking either side, these are Magnolia Figo, which a few years ago they were Michelias. Now they've decided to change it back to Magnolia. They're in flower right now, super fragrant, smell somewhat like Laffy Taffy candy. It's kind of this interesting, almost overpowering, not quite banana smell, but which the common name of it is banana shrub for that reason. But it's actually a magnolia. Flowers are small. This is just starting to open, but if it's completely open, you'll be able to tell that it's a magnolia flower, just based on the petals. But it's quite fragrant. Interesting plant. Usually early spring, early to mid spring bloomer. Well, I think that, we have a number of other gardens that we have open to the public. Unfortunately, the Jones house, they're in the process of a much needed makeover on the house itself that they're painting over there, so we can't go over there today. So I think this conclude my talk for today. So thank you very much, and hopefully it was informative and helpful. And
come back and see us.
And please come back and see us. Things are going to get back to normal at some point. So hopefully, you'll be able to get actually physically into the gardens. But this buys you a little bit of time, and you can see what's maybe going on a little bit in here as well. So thank you.